G'day divers and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you exactly how I took this award-winning photo using my smartphone. If you're new to my channel, I'm Shaun Elliott and I've been doing underwater videography and photography for over 25 years. This channel is all about using action cameras and mobile phones paired with economical aftermarket accessories to show you do not need to spend a fortune or carry around kilos and kilos of equipment to get some great underwater footage. If you want to know how you can use your mobile phone or action camera to take shots like these, then please like and subscribe to my channel. So the reason I'm making this video is a couple of weeks ago I got silver, second place, in the Underwater Australasia photo competition with this photo of a Shaun the Sheep that I took in Tulamben, Indonesia. And it was the only macro shot to get in the top 3 in the smartphone action camera category. And a lot of people have been asking me, how did I manage to take such a small little creature, only a few millimeters in size, just using my smartphone. So I'm going to go through all the hardware I used, the settings I used, the app I used, the techniques I used, so you can try and get a shot just like this. I don't know why I want to teach you how to do it, because that just causes me more competition in underwater competitions. But no, I'm just joking. I actually only went in the competition for a bit of fun. I'm really honoured that I came second. I wasn't expecting it. I really just threw that photo in as a last minute thing because my wife told me to. But I get a lot of enjoyment out of teaching people how to use cameras underwater, and this channel is all about smartphones and action cameras. So I want to show you how you can get photos like this as well. So please like and subscribe, and let's go through everything you need to know about getting small macro shots just like these. So I'm hoping the video won't get crazily long. That's why I will stick to just taking this particular photo. I'm going to make lots of videos in the series, so please subscribe. There's no way I can make just one video on how to take every shot with a smartphone. Video and photography is quite different, different types of shots, and I could talk about underwater videography and photography for days, so I try and keep them, under 30 minutes if I can, which means I need to sort of stay on track to one specific topic. But if you subscribe, I'll get more videos out. I do this for a hobby. I do it for fun. I'm not sitting here trying to make a living out of it or anything like that. So, bear with me. I get out at least one video a week. I try to do more, but it takes a lot of time to make these videos. To be honest, I've actually already spent a whole day trying to film this and I keep messing up and I keep starting again. So it does take a lot of time. It's not as easy as it probably looks when you get a final cut. So please bear with me. If there's any questions you've got whatsoever, please put it in the comments. I try to answer all the comments. I think I've answered all of them so far. Obviously, as the channel grows, that might become more difficult. And YouTube's a bit funny. I sometimes have trouble finding the questions. So if I don't answer, just give me some time. If not, just ask it again if you like, because I may just not have seen the question. So first of all, why the Divevolk? I'm not going to go into great detail because I have an entire video on why this is the best housing. It just is. It's the only housing I would recommend at the moment for using with a smartphone. Why specifically for macro photography? I mean, it all stems from the same reason. This has a membrane where I can touch my phone and use my phone exactly the same as I would above water. I can use the touch screen, which then means I can access every part of my phone. Every third-party app, every setting. I'm using my phone underwater exactly the same as I would when it was above water out of the housing. And you need that control. You need that access to third-party apps. Just because an app takes a photograph or a video, they are all very, very different in their quality. So I use multiple apps even. Like I use between 3 and 6 apps on a dive. I use some apps for a specific function. It might be just video, just at the telephoto lens, and that's the only thing I use that app for. Not one app, even when I have access to every single app in the App Store, would I use and go, okay, I'll just commit to that app. Because it doesn't. Not one. The best video apps do not take photos. The best photo apps don't do video very well or don't do it at all. Some apps are better at telephoto and doing macros. Some apps are better at wide. Having that access and having that ability to use your phone's touch screen is key to taking those more difficult shots. The thing about phones really is they bat above their average. They bat above their average at taking photos and video because you have the power of the smartphone and the multiple lenses. So if you don't have full access to those multiple lenses and you don't have full access to your smartphone, you aren't going to get the best out of your phone. In reality, your cameras aren't great. They are small lenses on small sensors, but it's that power and access to your phone that enables you to get really good shots, surprisingly well above what you'd expect out of a mobile phone. Now, Divevolk certainly doesn't sponsor this, and they haven't paid for it. And if you watch that video on why this is the best, it's easy to explain why it's the best. But I do have an affiliate link where you get a 6% discount. So if you're going to pick up any Divevolk products, then please use that link in the description. It'll give you a 6% discount, so save you money on all Divevolk products. Plus, it will help support this channel, which means I can make more videos like this showing you how you can use your mobile phones and your action cameras to get some great images. So next, why did I stick with Pixel this year? Look, I'm not going to try and convince you to change phones. It's of no interest to me. I don't want you writing in the comments, I changed from iPhone to Google and I hate it. Use whatever phone you want. They are all great phones. I live in Australia, so I really only get to pick from Google and Samsung and iPhone. Using other phones is unrealistic, especially where I live, because I live in a rural location and reception's an issue as it is. So I need a phone that has reception and works well on the Australian network. So it needs to be those big name brands. And I personally think right now, the Google Pixel 10 Pro XL takes the best underwater video and photo. Couple of things I said there, my opinion, and underwater photo and video. I'm not saying it's the best phone. I'm not even saying it's the best camera above water. What I'm saying is underwater, especially in a Divevolk housing, I think it performs better currently. It has better image stabilization. It is better at white balancing. The telephoto lens is better in my opinion than the others, especially when it comes to stabilization and white balance. I have very good access to those cameras and the image stabilization and third-party apps. I can shoot 60 raw images per second straight to my phone with a third-party app. So it is that. If you're not using Divevolk, I would not recommend you use an Android phone. The power of Android comes in the access to your camera and your phone in third-party apps. If you're going to be using one of the other brand housings where you need to use their one app, then I would stick with iPhone, because you're going to lose a lot of functions if you go to Android, and you're going to lose a lot of stability, which is one of the main reasons I would not recommend any of the other housings. There is nothing wrong with iPhone. Most people use an iPhone. You will still get a shot like this with your iPhone underwater. I just think the Pixel 10 Pro, especially for macro with its telephoto lens, does a better job than iPhone currently. When the Samsung S26 comes out, I'll reassess it. If some reports of the iPhone 17 start saying otherwise, then I might consider it. I do have a plan where I can just change phones whenever I like. So I am tempted to go out and try the iPhone 17. It really hasn't changed that much. So we'll see what the Samsung S26 does. But the difference are this much. So if you prefer iPhone, stay with an iPhone. If you prefer Samsung, stay with a Samsung. If you feel like trying a Google, then try Google. But there's lots of reasons to own a phone, and you're not just like me, where the most important thing to me is underwater photography and videography, and that's why I like the Google Pixel. Let's talk about the minimum hardware you need. So you need an underwater housing, obviously. Now, like I've said over and over again, I'd only recommend Divevolk, but if you're going to go with another housing, you need a housing that can attach a macro lens. So make sure that you can attach some sort of macro lens. So with the Divevolk system, you buy the expansion clamp, and then you can attach the 67mm lenses. If you buy the Platinum housing, it's built all as one, but with the C-Touch Max 4 Plus, you actually buy an expansion clamp, so you can then attach lenses and lights and trays and things like that. But you need to be able to attach a 67mm wet lens macro lens, otherwise you won't be able to do underwater macro. Next is going to be the 67mm macro lens. We need a macro lens. These are what's called a diopter. This one here is a plus 18. They also make a plus 8. Now, the plus 18 is a pro lens. It's quite expensive. It's 4 times as much as the plus 8. If you're just starting out, start with the plus 8. But if you can afford it, then it's a little bit sharper is what it is. I know it sounds like a lot of power difference, plus 8 to plus 18. It is a bit, but it's not as much as it sounds. So you still get a great macro shot with the plus 8, but it's more the extra sharpness that you'll get with the plus 18. And it works like a pair of glasses. That's why it's a diopter. So exactly the same as glasses. Right now, I can see my Panasonic really clearly, but I can't see the back of my Divevolk clearly because I need reading glasses. It's the same with your phone. My telephoto lens will be able to focus on the Panasonic. It won't be able to focus on the Divevolk in front of me. If I then put the diopter, the plus 18, just like if I put my reading glasses on that are plus 1.5, it then lowers the focusing distance. So suddenly the Panasonic will be out of focus, but you'll be able to focus really close to the Divevolk housing, and all the characters on the back will become big and clear. That's exactly what's happening with this lens. So it's going to take the telephoto lens on your Google Pixel from a focusing distance of 75 centimeters or 30, we'll get to that in a minute, and it's going to reduce it right down to, just a centimeter or 2. You're going to be right up against that little critter, and that's really what's going to make it that much bigger on your screen. Next, I'd highlight, you need a light. I'm not just going to recommend it, you need a light. There is absolutely no point in doing macro unless you're at 1 meter without some sort of lighting. The reason being, you're going to be using a telephoto lens, which means less light. It's also a less light sensitive sensor. You're then going to put a macro lens on it. You're going to be so close to your subject, you're going to cause a shadow. It's going to be a very, very low amount of light, so you're not going to be able to take a decent shot without lighting. The upside is, because you're so close to your subject, you need a tiny little light. You do not need big lights for macro. All you need is a little light like this SL20. I'll be doing a video on the SL20 soon. I've been getting footage with that. It has a really nice snoot that comes with it, and if there was one thing I would do about this picture that I'm doing right now, if I'd had the snoot with me at the time, I would have used a snoot. But that's a whole different video in itself, and I will be doing a video on how to use a snoot and this light. But you only need a little. This is 2000 lumens. It's plenty of light for doing macro. Doesn't have to be this light, but just any light. You need a light. Does not have to be crazily big, because you're going to need to light that subject, get all the color, and not end up with a really, really high ISO and a grainy image. As for the tripod and the Bluetooth shutter, they are optional. I would highly recommend them. They're not that much. The tripod gives you something to prop on like it is right now to assist you with stability. The Bluetooth shutter, now I didn't have a Bluetooth shutter when I took this photo. It didn't exist, it hadn't been released. I really like it. You don't need it. I mean, you can just touch the back of the screen, but anything that stops any movement, instead of having to move my hand, it's only a little bit, even just my thumb, I don't need to look down to see where to press, and there's less movement. Less movement means there's less chance of me staring up the bottom and less chance of me spooking the creature I'm taking a photo of. If you say taking a photo of a nudibranch and the gills are out, that little bit of movement can be enough for him to pull his gills in, and then you're going to have to wait while his gills come back out again. That's why things like this Bluetooth shutter can just make a little bit of life a little bit easier, and the less movement means less chance of blurry shots as well. But you definitely don't need it. I just think for the money, it's definitely worth adding to your macro setup. Now next we're going to talk about how your phone works a little bit, because you need to know to make this make sense. Your phone, and all of them are the same, will make you think you have zoom lenses. It will make you think you have macro lenses for all of them, and you don't. What you have is 3, well, generally, I will talk about it from the Google Pixel's point of view, and most of the high-end phones will be pretty much the same, is you have 3 lenses. You have a 0.5 ultra-wide lens, which is about a 13mm equivalent. You then have a 1 times 24mm equivalent main lens, which is the best lens on your phone. You then have a 5 times telephoto lens, which is about 110mm equivalent. And then on the Google Pixel 10, you also have a 2 times, which is a sensor cropped shot, and a 10 times as well. But neither of them are actual optical lenses, but they are better than just straight digital zooms. But I'd suggest you don't use the 10 times. The 2 times is actually quite good, especially if you put enough light on it. But you don't have anything in between. You don't have a zoom lens. You know, the iPhone's really good at trying to suck you in. It's very actually good at how it zooms through the lenses. Much better than Google. You can see the steps in Google. In the iPhone, it is actually impressive just how well it goes through those lenses. But everything other than those specific lenses is a digital zoom. And if you want a good shot, you do not want to be using a digital zoom. And if you want to put your image into most photo comps, you might get disqualified for using a digital zoom. The comp that this was in, they allowed up to a 25% crop. Now, digital zoom is a crop. So if you're on a 2 times digital zoom, that's 100% crop. If they work it out, they're just going to disqualify you. And to be honest, your image is not going to be good enough. It's not going to be sharp enough. They're going to know straight away, and you're just not going to get picked anyway. A digital zoom is literally just cropping your image. There is no fanciness about it. It's just making you think you're zooming. You need to be sticking to those optical lenses. The next part is the macro part. The only macro lens on your phone is the ultra-wide lens, which is a bit unfortunate. It's probably the last lens you want really to be macro most of the time, but the ultra-wide lens is the only macro lens on there. So if you've chosen your 1 times lens, it will focus down to 11 centimeters on a Google, and they're all sort of similar. So on a Google Pixel, the 1 times and therefore the 2 times lens will focus down to about 11 centimeters from its subject. If you are then closer than 11 centimeters and you don't switch the macro settings off and the lens auto selection off, your phone will then drop back to the ultra wide lens and use a digital zoom to make you think you're using your main lens. So not so bad at that level because you're going from 0.5 to 1. If you're on the 2 times lens though, you're going to go from a lens crop, a sensor crop, straight back to a 4 times digital zoom, and that's going to be horrible. Then if you're using your telephoto, which is 5 times, it only focuses at 75 centimeters on auto. With the new Google Pixel 10 Pro, if you put it in manual, it will focus down to 30 centimeters, but only in manual. But once it is closer than 75 centimeters, it will then drop back to your main lens and use a digital zoom, so a 5 times digital zoom. If you get closer than 11 centimeters like we do with macro, it is going to drop back to your ultra wide lens and use a 10 times digital zoom. So that image, it might look all right on your phone, it may look all right on social media on your phone, but it's going to look horrible on your computer. It's not a real image, and you're sure not going to be able to blow it up and put it on your wall or use it in a photo competition. We want an optical image, which means we need to be able to stop our phone from changing lenses so we know that we're on our telephoto lens when we're doing macro. The other reason being is because we're using a wet lens, if you can't tell the phone to stay on this lens, you're never going to get a shot, because what's going to happen is you're going to put your telephoto lens in front of your 5 times, or you're going to put your wet lens in front of your telephoto lens. For a split second, your phone won't be able to focus. It will then go, uh-oh, it's out of focus. It will then drop back to the 1 times main lens. It'll be outside of where the lens is. It'll just become a mess. It'll be jumping all over the place and you'll get nothing. So we need to be able to change our settings so we know 100% that we are using the lens that we have picked. Now, as for apps, for this photo, I used the Pixel Camera app. Now, I actually think that for most of the time with a Pixel, the Pixel Camera app for photography is the best app to use. Now, certainly if you're going to stick with JPEGs, I would stick with the Pixel Camera app. So when you start, I would use Pixel Camera, use 12 megapixel and take JPEGs, because they'll be much quicker to fire off and you'll get that timing. And the Pixel Camera app is definitely the best app in the Pixel for a JPEG. You know, Google obviously knows exactly what their cameras are doing and make the software accordingly. If you're shooting in RAW, well, that's a bit different. You can start using third-party apps, and ultimately you will want to shoot in RAW. You know, Open Camera's free. That's pretty good. It's a bit clunky. I still think Pixel Camera is still the better option. Really the only annoyance I have with Pixel camera, apart from the fact that its video section sucks, is that in the camera section, it has not bad at all manual focus with focus peaking, but the moment you take a photo, it switches off. The manual focus doesn't, it stays where it is, but the focus peaking switches off, which I suppose above water doesn't really matter, but underwater, it'd be nice if it continued to show that focus peaking. So you know, if you can see on the screen and you know it's still in focus, that's fine. You can take a couple of shots, but you might need to touch the screen again to get that focus peaking back on to make sure that your critter is in focus. But, you know, really, there's no reason when it comes to photography not to use the Pixel camera app, because it knows the phone the best, and it's actually pretty straightforward to use while still giving you access to full manual controls, even if they are a bit clunky. So let's go through the Pixel camera app and the settings we need to do. There's not actually many to get control in the Pixel camera, which is great. So we have put our plus 18 macro lens onto over the telephoto, and here you can see at the ultra wide lens, it's too low. Now the reason why you need to be careful here, and the reason I wanted to show you this, is because if I go to the 5x lens, hit the 5x lens and zoom in, it looks like on face value that it's working not too bad. But what it's actually done is used the ultra wide lens and zoomed in. The reason I know that is the picture quality isn't very good. The lens is slightly off because it's obviously not in the middle of the lens. And that yellow circle means it's using macro, which means it's only on the 0.5 lens using a 10 times digital zoom. So it's not a good photo. It's optically wrong because the lens is off. It is, you know, using a 10 times digital zoom. So what we need to do is switch that off. And it's quick and easy to do. You just hit the settings in the bottom right, go to Pro, and see at lens selection, if I go to manual, it suddenly changed, became a much better picture, and you can tell because the circle's now white, it's not yellow when it comes up, and you've got T, W, and UW as your lens selections on the side, which is telephoto, wide, and ultra wide. So now we know we're on our telephoto lens. It's as simple as that. We can now, even with auto, we can take a nice clear photograph in 50 megapixels with our optical telephoto lens. Now, if you want to use manual focus, which I recommend you try with focus peaking, and on the 10 especially, because the 10 Pro now allows you to focus even closer with manual. So if I hit the top right hand corner, I hit focus. Now focus peaking is put focus on. Focus peaking is active. You'll see a little bit of purple on his helmet. That means his helmet is in focus. I could take a photo there. Or if I want to get even closer, I can use manual focus now on the 10, and you'll see he'll get blurry, and I'm going to need to get closer, and I can get right down to just focusing on his hand there. So I can get even it's not a lot closer with it. It is without a macro lens. It drops from 75 to 30 centimeters, but with a macro lens, you know, you're getting a couple more millimeters. But then we can use the focus peaking to check where we want in focus. You know, maybe we'll use his arm as a good example. See, that's in focus now. It's got a slight purple tinge around it. And then we can take that photo and we know his arm is in focus. Unfortunately, with the Google Pixel camera app, to make the focus peaking come back up again, every time we take a shot, we need to press that top right button, but it's not the end of the world. It does still leave your focus fixed. Now, one reason I would suggest you at least fix your focus is then you're not trying to chase the autos, trying to chase the focus and the creatures moving. If you fix your focus and go, right, this spot is in focus, and then let the movement, whether it's the water movement or the movement of the creature, to come into that focus, and then you capture it at that point. If you try and use auto and movement, you're going to be chasing each other. So put it into manual, put your focus peaking on, get your point, and then if it's like a nudibranch, what I normally like to do is find the spot in front that's in focus. Say he was a nudibranch moving, I would put the purple there and let him crawl into that purple section, and as he crawls into focus, take my shot. Now, to give you an idea, I was taking a picture. Now, underwater will be even more macro because it's going to be larger, but I was just taking a photo of that guy's little hand. That's how macro it is, you know, just a few millimeters. And like I said, That's doing it above water. It is actually more zoomed in when you're underwater because it's designed to use underwater, plus obviously the change in the refraction in light. As for the main settings for the phone, there really isn't much to do. I would be worrying about focus because that is your problem. The thing with a phone is you do not have aperture control, which is what you'd be looking at if you were using a normal camera. And you've got no way of changing the aperture, so your issue is focus now. So don't worry about it. It's well lit, so your white balance should be right, and your ISO and shutter speed should be, fast enough shutter and low enough ISO that you're getting a good quality image. I like to keep an eye on it. Just, take note if you see the shutter speed going under a 1/100th of a second about, or if your ISO is going over 400, but you shouldn't get anywhere near that if you lit it up with a light. And your white balance 99% of the time will be right with macro with this sort of light as well. Things are different if you start getting into snoots and trying to take artistic shots and things like that. But, initially just worry about focus. Focus is so hard. Worry about the focus because you've got no aperture control, and just let it automatically worry about exposure and white balance for you. As for whether you shoot JPEG or RAW and 12 megapixels or 50 megapixels, look, you obviously want to work up to getting a 50 megapixel RAW image if you can. It doesn't mean as much, especially the 50 megapixel, 12 megapixel thing. So, I would recommend you start at 12 megapixel JPEG only, just because your camera, or your phone, I should say, it's not just a camera, will react a lot quicker. You'll be able to fire off much more shots a lot quicker. If you're then trying to work up to the best picture you can, then work up to getting the 50 megapixel RAW image. Apart from that, there really isn't any settings there to worry about. It doesn't really matter whether it's in underwater mode or not. You'll find with underwater mode, it'll be a little bit punchier. It ups the saturation by the look of it. But apart from that, it's not going to really do anything because the whole thing's lit up with your lighting. So let's talk about techniques, especially using this setup. This is pretty much what I would take out right now if I was going to go and do macro anyway. I wouldn't add a lot to this. I'd really only add things if I wanted to take other shots as well. Because obviously this is no good for wide angle right now. I don't have enough lighting, all that sort of stuff. But if I'm going out, and I often do, just to do macro, this is exactly what I'd be taking right now. I'd probably take a snoot with me as well, but that's for another video. What we want to do is, the biggest problem initially with macro is backscatter. Now, the biggest person who makes the backscatter is you. If your buddies are making the backscatter, then get rid of your buddies. Learn how to solo dive. Buddies are a waste of space, but especially when you do photography. But a lot of the time it's you that causes the issue. You see this great nudie break, you race in, by the time you set up everything, you get your lights right, you get it in focus, you've stirred up the bottom and sand's going through everything. So what you want to do is do some pre-setup. Put your lens, make sure it is over your 5x telephoto. It's dead center, because if it's not dead center, it's not going to work well. I find it's easier to have the lens off, put the holder over, tighten it up, then put the lens on, so it's centered perfectly over your 5x lens. Then, go up to something that doesn't move, a rock, a piece of coral, whatever it is, something that's easy, that doesn't move. Adjust your light. Now, lighting, again, is a whole subject in itself, which I will be doing a video on. But if you're starting in macro, the best thing to do is just start with the light directly over your lens, a bit of an angle, because what you're trying to do is light his face. And if it's up at the top, you're going to have less chance of backscatter. That is not always the perfect spot. Lighting is one of those things where everybody wants the answer, and there really isn't an answer, to be honest. There is no real wrong. There's just getting the best shot. So the good thing about video lights is you can see live on the screen what's happening. So if that's not working, just think about where's the shadow, think about where you're seeing the backscatter, and move the light accordingly. That's the best thing you're going to do. What you don't want to be doing is lighting anything up in front of the subject that doesn't need to be lit, and you don't want the light bouncing back into the lens. Apart from that, really all you're trying to do is think about how you want to light your subject and minimize your backscatter. And that's also important if you're thinking about going to a photo comp, because most photo comps will only allow you to take out, a very minimal amount of backscatter. They will ask to check your raw image, and if you've, you know, and certainly if you use an AI software to take that backscatter out, you'll be disqualified. So you need to, you know, adjust your lighting in such a way that you're not getting too many particles. And I would start with the overhead just slightly in line with the lens pointing forward to light the face of your subject and go from there. But like I said, I'll do an entire video on lighting. Then, you know, get that so the subject, you've got a very small depth of field with a macro lens. Certainly when you're using a +18 and a 5x telephoto. So you're going to need that light in, you know, the right spot. You can set it up, lock it off, then lock your focus off. You know, have everything so your tripod, you're taking a shot of that rock. Then you know that everything's as close as it can be for when you approach your first macro subject. That way, when you approach, you come in slowly, you come in calmly, try and come as gently. Most macro subjects are on the bottom. Don't damage anything. Think about where you're going to be going. You may not be able to, you know, touch the bottom. That's where a tripod can often be handy, where you can just place this down gently. Again, don't put it on the reef. You know, a photo is not more important than the marine life. Think about that. But you could simply place it down and not touch the bottom. You need good buoyancy and control. But if you can lay on the bottom, it gives you a bit of a stable if it's sand. But you need to come in nice and easy and don't move around very much. Get your camera into position. And then what I like to do is with your manual focus is you want to sit there for a second. A lot of things like that, Shaun the Sheep, he's on the leaf and the leaf is moving. So he was going in and out of focus, and just give it some time and just wait for the time. And you'll be surprised just how consistent some of that movement can be. And if you take your time, you will be able to time it to take that shot as the critter comes through that focus range. Because the biggest problem you have, or the most difficulty, and one reason I actually really enjoy doing it, is the depth of field on a phone for macro is paper thin. You've got no aperture control, so you've got no way of increasing that depth of field. You've got, you know, that millimeter or two where a critter is in and out of focus. So it does take a lot of practice. The other one to think about is which way the current's going, if there is some current. You don't want to come in towards the creature up current, because one, you're going to start getting pushed towards it sometimes. Two, if you stir the bottom up, the sand's going to go straight out over your subject. So think about which way the water's pushing. Think about current. Be very aware of your environment, and think about your buddy too. If you are diving in a group, maybe this isn't the time to be trying to spend half an hour taking this picture. That is one thing about macro. You need to be, like when I was in Indonesia, I was had my own guide. In Australia, thankfully, we don't have stupid laws, and I'm qualified as a solo diver, and I solo dive most of my time, or I go out with another photographer who's quite keen to be sitting around doing nothing. If you've got any questions, then please put them in the comments. If it helped you, please let me know. I'll be making lots more videos about using your action cameras and smartphones, and certainly using the Divevolk system underwater, so please like and subscribe to my channel. Until next time, don't forget to keep blowing bubbles, and never forget, the deeper you go, the further you get away from all those idiots.